In February 1959, deep in the unforgiving Ural Mountains, a group of 9 experienced hikers met a fate so baffling that it has haunted investigators for over 60 years. Their camp was abandoned under mysterious circumstances, and over the following weeks, the bodies were found in conditions that defy explanation. What could have driven 9 skilled adventurers to flee their shelter in sheer terror? Was it nature's ruthless force, or was there a darker, deliberate interference at play? Tonight, we peel back the layers of secrecy surrounding the Dyatlov Pass incident to address the elephant in the room. What really happened in the Ural Mountains? Before we delve into the mystery, we must understand who these 9 courageous individuals were. Organized by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old radio engineering student from the Ural Polytechnical Institute, the group was comprised primarily of students and recent graduates, all certified for high-difficulty mountain expeditions. Although 10 initially set out, one member, Yuri, age 21, was forced to turn back due to health issues on the 28th of January 1959, sparing him from the tragic fate that befell his comrades. Let's introduce the 9 who continued. Igor Dyatlov, born the 13th of January 1936, age 23. The determined leader and 5th-year student in radio engineering. Zinaida Kolmogorova, born the 12th of January 1937, age 22. A resilient 5th-year student in radio engineering. Ludmila Dubinina, born the 12th of May 1938, age 20. A 4th-year student in engineering and economics known for her sensitivity. Yuri Doroshenko, born the 29th of January 1938, age 21. A 4th-year student in radio engineering with a calm, analytical mind. Alexander Kolevatov, born the 16th of November 1934, age 24. A 4th-year student in nuclear physics with an infectious enthusiasm. Yuri Krivonishenko, born the 7th of February 1935, age 23. A 1957 graduate in construction and hydraulics who later worked at a secret nuclear facility. Rustam Slobodin, born the 11th of January 1936, age 23. A graduate in engineering technology, employed in industry. Nikolai Thibault-Brignoles, born the 5th of July 1935, age 23. A civil engineering graduate with some aspects of his background still shrouded in mystery. Semyon Zolotaryov, born the 2nd of February 1921, age 38. The eldest member, formerly an instructor at a tour base, whose vast experience lent the group gravitas. These hikers were not amateurs, they were rigorously trained, prepared for extreme conditions, and united by a shared passion for exploration. On the 23rd of January 1959, the group received their route book, outlining the number 5 trail approved by the Sverdlovsk City Committee of Physical Culture and Sport. Originally intended for 11 people, with Semyon Zolotaryov as the extra member, the plan was ambitious. They departed Sverdlovsk, modern-day Yekaterinburg, the same day they received the route book. The group arrived at Ivdel by train on the 25th of January, then took a truck to Vizhay, the northernmost inhabited settlement in the region. On the 27th of January, they set off on their trek toward Goro-Torton, a mountain roughly 10 to 12 miles north of where the incident eventually occurred. Diaries and camera footage recovered from their last camp trace their progress up until the day preceding the tragedy, reflecting both meticulous planning and the brutal reality of the wilderness. On the 31st of January 1959, as a heavy snowstorm raged and visibility dwindled, the group reached a highland area near Kholat Syakhl, or Dead Mountain in the local Monsi language. Faced with deteriorating conditions, the hikers made a critical decision. They stored excess food and gear at a base camp in a wooded valley, locally known as the Labaz, but chose to set up camp on the open, exposed slope of Kholat Syakhl instead of moving 1.5 kilometers downhill to a more sheltered forest. It is speculated that Igor Dyatlov, determined to maintain the altitude they had gained, insisted on staying on the slope. That night, in the midst of a violent blizzard, the hikers fled their tent in panic, the beginning of a tragic end to an ambitious expedition. When the group did not return as scheduled, relatives grew increasingly worried. By the 16th of February, 4 days past the expected deadline, the 12th of February, no telegram or message had been received from the hikers. In response, the head of the Ural Polytechnical Institute dispatched the first rescue teams, initially consisting of volunteer students and teachers. Later, army and militia forces, complete with planes and helicopters, joined the operation. On the 26th of February 1959, after extensive efforts, searchers finally reached the area and discovered the abandoned tent on the slope of Kholat Syakhl. Mikhail Sharavin, a student with the rescue team, described the tent as half-torn and completely covered with snow. All personal belongings, including the hikers' shoes, were left behind, evidence that they had fled in a state of absolute panic. Following the discovery of the tent, the search intensified. The process of finding the bodies unfolded in several phases. Phase 1. The first 2 bodies. At the edge of a forest, beneath a large Siberian pine, the searchers discovered the first 2 bodies. Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko were found shoeless and dressed only in their underwear. The pine's branches were broken up to 5 meters high, suggesting that one of them might have attempted to climb it in a desperate effort to seek help. Notably, Krivonishenko was found lying face up, hinting that his body might have been repositioned post-mortem. Phase 2. Intermediate discoveries. On the 27th of February, between the pine and the abandoned camp, 3 more bodies were recovered. Igor Dyatlov was found approximately 300 meters from the pine. Zinaida Kolmogorova was discovered about 630 meters away. Rustam Slobodin was located on the 5th of March, roughly 480 meters from the tree. These bodies were positioned in a way that indicated they had attempted to return to the safety of the tent. Forensic analyses concluded that these individuals died primarily of hypothermia, although Slobodin's minor skull fracture was noted. Phase 3. The final 4 bodies. The remaining 4 bodies were not found until the 4th of May 1959, over 2 months after the incident. They were discovered under approximately 4 meters of snow in a ravine about 75 meters further into the woods from the pine. These bodies were found in comparatively better clothing than those discovered earlier, suggesting that survivors who died later might have taken extra clothing from the earlier victims. Detailed forensic examinations revealed that Nikolai Thibault-Brignoles suffered extensive skull damage, while Ludmila Dubinina and Semyon Zolotaryov had severe chest fractures, injuries so massive that they were likened to the impact of a high-speed car crash. Additional forensic tests even detected traces of radiation on some clothing, further complicating the mystery. Every discovery only deepened the enigma, leaving investigators with countless unanswered questions about that fateful expedition. Immediately following the recovery of the bodies, a legal inquest was launched. The initial autopsies of the first 5 bodies, Krivonishenko, Doroshenko, Dyatlov, Kolmogorova, and Slobodin, revealed no external injuries sufficient to cause death, leading to a preliminary diagnosis of hypothermia. Slobodin's minor skull fracture was noted but not considered fatal. However, the subsequent discovery of the final 4 bodies in May drastically altered the investigative narrative. Thibault-Brignoles exhibited major skull trauma. Dubinina and Zolotaryov suffered catastrophic chest fractures with no external injuries, suggesting an internal force of immense power. All 4 bodies found near a nearby stream displayed severe soft tissue damage to the head and face. Dubinina was missing her tongue and parts of her lips, Zolotaryov was missing his eyeballs, and Kolevatov's eyebrows were absent. Dr. Boris Vozrozdeny, the forensic expert, posited that these injuries occurred under extremely high pressure, though no conventional cause was identified. Investigators also considered alternative explanations. Some initially speculated that local Monsi people, or even a Yeti, an ape-like creature purported to inhabit the Himalayan mountain range in Asia, had attacked the group, but the lack of corresponding tracks or evidence of a violent struggle led to this theory being dismissed. The tent had been clearly cut open from the inside, indicating the hikers left voluntarily, albeit in panic. Despite the extreme cold, temperatures between -25 and -30 degrees Celsius, and severe weather, many of the hikers fled with only minimal clothing. Forensic analysis later revealed traces of radiation on certain clothing items, an anomaly that has sparked additional theories. The official conclusion at the time was that a compelling natural force had driven the hikers from their tent, resulting in a cascade of fatal events. The inquest was closed in May 1959, and all records were subsequently archived in secrecy, a decision that has only added fuel to the enduring controversy. Over the decades, the Dyatlov Pass Incident has inspired a wide array of theories as researchers and enthusiasts seek to explain what truly happened on that frozen night. From natural disasters to covert military experiments, numerous ideas have emerged to shed light on the tragedy. In this chapter, we explore 5 of the most discussed theories in detail, examining the evidence behind each and addressing the gaps that still remain. Some researchers have proposed that the hikers might have been attacked by local indigenous forces or even by an unknown, wild creature. Local folklore among the Montsi speaks of mysterious beings and ritualistic altars used for sacrificial purposes. Based on this narrative, one possibility is that a small group of Montsi, motivated by ritual or protective customs, could have ambushed the camp, forcing the hikers to flee in panic. Alternatively, an elusive, yeti-like creature might have launched an assault. In fact, one of the final, though ambiguous, photographs appears to capture the image of a large, unfamiliar figure that some interpret as evidence of such a creature. However, when we examine the nature of the injuries, significant doubts arise. The severe internal chest trauma and broken ribs documented in several victims, which lack the typical external wounds of a close-quarters struggle, are inconsistent with injuries that could be inflicted by human attackers or even by a conventional predatory animal. In other words, the force required to produce such injuries would far exceed what is typically possible through a human assault. Also, detailed footprint analyses reveal only the tracks of the hikers, with no evidence of additional individuals or large predators in the area. While the notion of an attack by local forces or a mysterious creature adds an intriguing and sensational layer to the incident, the forensic evidence, particularly the internal injuries, strongly suggests that such trauma could not have been caused by a human hand or by a typical animal predator. This discrepancy raises serious questions about the validity of an assault-based explanation for the tragedy. Some researchers suggest that the hikers were caught in the path of a covert Soviet military experiment. Historical records indicate that Soviet military tests, including parachute mine exercises, were conducted in the region around the time of the incident. Proponents argue that shockwaves or low-level radiological exposure from such tests could have produced internal injuries without leaving prominent external marks. Supporters of this theory point to the low-level radiation found on some of the clothing and eyewitness accounts of strange, glowing orange orbs in the sky near the site. These observations have been interpreted as potential evidence of military-grade explosives or radiological materials affecting the group. In this view, the shockwaves may have disoriented the hikers and contributed to the severe internal damage observed in some victims. However, a significant limitation of this explanation is that the radiation levels detected appear too low to conclusively indicate deliberate military testing. Additionally, there is a lack of concrete military documentation linking such tests to the incident. Another shortfall is that the orderly escape footprints and many environmental details do not completely align with the sudden, explosive nature expected from military tests. Although this theory introduces an intriguing possibility, the evidence remains largely circumstantial. Another fascinating hypothesis proposes that the environmental conditions at Dyatlov Pass generated infrasound, sound waves below the level of human hearing, capable of triggering intense panic attacks. According to this idea, wind interacting with the mountain's topography could create a Kármán vortex street, producing low-frequency infrasound that induces overwhelming, irrational fear. This infrasound could have driven the hikers to abandon their tent in a state of confused panic, leaving them inadequately dressed against the bitter cold. Additionally, some suggest that hallucinogenic mushrooms, which grow naturally in the Urals, might have been inadvertently ingested by one or more group members, further impairing their judgment and amplifying the infrasound's psychological effects. This combination could explain the unusual, almost surreal behavior documented at the site. A drawback to this theory is that while infrasound may account for psychological distress, it does not fully explain the severe internal injuries, such as the massive chest fractures and missing soft tissues. Furthermore, evidence for hallucinogenic mushroom consumption is purely circumstantial and does not align with the robust forensic findings. Despite these concerns, the theory adds an interesting psychological perspective to the overall mystery. In this scenario, a relatively small, delayed slab avalanche occurred on the slope above the camp. Over the course of the night, heavy snowfall combined with the weight of accumulated snow gradually weakened the snowpack. Eventually, a slab detached and slowly pressed against the tent, forcing the hikers to cut their way out from the inside, abandoning nearly all their belongings and shoes in a desperate bid for survival. A 2021 study by physicists Alexander Puzrin and Johann Gorm suggests that even a modest snow slab could generate enough force to damage a tent and cause injuries similar to those observed. This model indicates that the gradual buildup of stress in the snowpack could eventually lead to a collapse, not as dramatic as a full-scale avalanche, but enough to trigger a state of panic. Additionally, it is plausible that some hikers sought refuge in a nearby ravine, where a secondary collapse of the overlying snow could have delivered severe internal injuries, such as the broken ribs and chest trauma noted in some victims. One limitation of this theory is that the terrain did not exhibit the typical debris patterns of a large avalanche, and the footprint analysis suggests the hikers moved at a normal pace rather than in frenzied panic. Another gap is that this explanation does not fully account for some of the more gruesome injuries, such as missing eyeballs or traces of radiation on clothing. Despite these issues, the delayed slab avalanche remains a strong candidate for explaining the torn tent and certain internal injuries. This hypothesis proposes that a violent katabatic wind, a sudden, powerful downslope gust, struck the camp that night. In 2019, a Swedish-Russian expedition reported that such winds, capable of reaching speeds of 20 to 30 meters per second, can forcefully blow open a tent and disorient even the most experienced hikers. According to this theory, the sudden gust ripped the tent open, causing the group to evacuate in an organized yet panicked manner. Besides, the theory holds that the extreme wind could have dislodged the snow-covering parts of the slope, especially in a sheltered ravine where some hikers may have sought refuge. The resulting collapse of snow in that confined space could have generated a force comparable to a car crash, explaining the severe chest injuries and broken ribs observed in several bodies. Opponents of the katabatic wind explanation note that while such winds can cause structural damage, they may not be sufficient to produce the precise internal injuries documented. Another limitation is that the footprints indicate relatively normal walking speeds, suggesting the escape was not as chaotic as one would expect from a violent windstorm. Despite these concerns, the katabatic wind theory effectively accounts for the torn tent and the possibility of a secondary snow collapse, making it a compelling explanation when considered alongside the slab avalanche scenario. Here's our take on how the 9 courageous hikers met their unexpected demise. After sifting through all the evidence and competing theories, our analysis leads us to favor a combination of a delayed slab avalanche and extreme katabatic winds as the most plausible explanation. Here's what we believe happened. A relatively small, delayed slab avalanche likely destabilized the snowpack above the tent. As heavy snowfall accumulated, stress gradually built up until a section of the snow detached and slowly pressed against the tent, forcing the hikers to urgently cut their way out in a state of panic. Simultaneously, a sudden, violent katabatic wind, capable of reaching speeds of 20 to 30 meters per second, swept over the camp, blowing open the tent and disorienting the group. Some of the hikers, in a desperate bid for shelter, moved toward a nearby ravine, where they dug into the base of a snowbank in search of cover. Unfortunately, this very location proved disastrous, as the snowbank, under hurricane-strength winds, sloughed over the camp. Here's where we believe a critical secondary event occurred. As those hikers sheltered in the ravine, the accumulated snow above, already destabilized by the initial slab avalanche and exacerbated by the harsh wind, collapsed onto the ravine floor. This sudden load of snow acted like confined pressure, similar to that of a car crash, and was sufficient to cause catastrophic internal injuries, such as the severe chest trauma and broken ribs observed in some of the bodies, even in the absence of significant external lacerations. As for the more gruesome injuries, such as the missing eyeballs and soft tissue damage on the face, it is possible that these occurred either from additional trauma during the collapse or post-mortem due to secondary factors like scavenging or further pressure from shifting snow. Additionally, the detected traces of radiation on some clothing might be attributed to naturally occurring radioactive elements in the region, rather than to any deliberate military experiment. No evidence suggests the involvement of any wild creature. There's simply no need to invoke a yeti or other legendary attacker when the natural explanation, though tragic, fits the bulk of the forensic data. The poor choice of camping site on an exposed slope appears to have been the critical error. While no single theory perfectly accounts for every detail, the interplay between a delayed slab avalanche and extreme katabatic winds provides the most cohesive narrative, reconciling the torn tent, the orderly escape footprints, and the severe internal injuries. Even after more than 60 years, the Dyatlov Pass incident continues to challenge our understanding. The truth may lie in the rare convergence of natural forces, compounded by human error and environmental hazards, that led to one of history's most enduring mysteries. Decades have passed since that fateful night at Dyatlov Pass, yet the incident continues to captivate and confound the world. The remains of the 9 hikers now rest at Mikhailovsko Cemetery in Yekaterinburg, serving as a solemn memorial to lives lost under mysterious circumstances. In 1990, Anatoly Gushchin's book The Price of State Secrets is 9 Lives sparked renewed public debate by suggesting that secret Soviet experiments might have played a role, an idea that, while controversial, opened the door for further investigation. Former investigator Lev Nikitich Ivanov later revealed that his team had encountered inexplicable phenomena, including sightings of strange flying spheres, before high-ranking officials ordered the investigation closed. In a 2015 interview, his boss, Yevgeny Okishev, mentioned plans for another expedition to re-examine the case, only to have the effort abruptly halted by orders from Moscow. Subsequent expeditions have continued to revisit the site. In 2019, a Swedish-Russian team proposed that a violent katabatic wind might explain the hikers' sudden panic, while a 2021 study by Alexander Puzrin and Johan Gorm demonstrated that even a modest slab avalanche could have damaged the tent and caused injuries consistent with those observed. These modern investigations, along with newly released documents and archived diaries, ensure that the search for answers remains as vibrant as ever. Independent researchers, the Dyatlov Foundation, and a growing community of enthusiasts persist in their quest to piece together the truth behind this enduring mystery. Even after more than 60 years, the truth behind the Dyatlov Pass incident remains elusive. What really happened on that frigid night? Was it the result of a delayed slab avalanche combined with violent katabatic winds, a covert military experiment, or a phenomenon that defies explanation altogether? We invite you to share your insights and theories in the comments below. Your perspective might be the missing piece in solving this perplexing puzzle. If you're fascinated by unsolved mysteries and deep-dive investigations into history's most chilling cases, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. This is The Strange and the Sinister, where the truth is always stranger than fiction.